So I am now recording, and so welcome to our second week of J122 and critical skills, crime scenes to conviction. And so this week what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of the details about what the assignments are this week and to clarify something that a few of you have wondered about regarding week number 2. With week number 2, I'm going to go over what the assignments are. And usually, in this week, this lecture is pretty fast. And the reason is because of what I'm getting ready to do now. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And so you can see from our screen here, let me move this down here a minute here. Okay, you can see my instructor information. And again, I remind students, you can feel free to call me or reach out to me just like it says here. It means what it says. And then this we haven't gotten to yet, week 4. In week 4, which will be the next lecture that we have, that's when you'll have the first written assignment that requires APA, citations and references. Okay, the assignments you did in week 1, some people gave citation references. It's okay, but it wasn't necessary. So our next lecture will take place on in week number 4. So let's take a look at our announcement here. The announcement for this week is we're going to deal with models of CJ communication. Throughout this course, we were dealing with various methods of communicating. And so your reading for this week is Chapter 3, Written and Interpersonal Communication, and Reporting and Writing, Sections 1, Parts D through H. Also, the section Police are Interpersonal. Now, these are some of the sections that you're going to look at. Now, you're also going to find out that your discussion posts, which were due yesterday, not yesterday, I'm sorry, today is Thursday now, Tuesday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, because as you know, all your posts are due on Tuesday nights, except week 1, which were Wednesday, and that your reply post is due this Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then finally, you have CJ writing practice. Now, CJ writing practice is not a graded assignment. So you'll look under assignments, you won't see it. And I'll show you why in a few minutes. But the quiz is. So basically this week, your assignments, as you will see in a few minutes, consist of the quiz, and I said this in here. Student asked me, I put it in the announcement, and the student probably didn't read the announcement because it said the only written assignment is the quiz. Well, of course, you know, a discussion post, but when it gets to written assignments is the quiz, okay? And then I point out that the CJ writing practice is an interactive exercise that is not graded, but I highly recommend you doing it. And we're going to go through it, and we're going to do it tonight in this session before we adjourn. And then I remind you about my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. I shared with you why that is based upon my personal experiences and why I'm so adamant about students performing and doing well and becoming professionals in the field. So let me remove that. So anyway, let's look at our calendar. I'd like to take a look at our calendar and you'll see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. Let's go to course calendar. Here we go. And it shows your reading assignments that I just went over with you. Again, I always encourage students to click on this. When you click on this, it gives you more details. It tells you what you're supposed to do. And then same thing with your reply post. It tells you what the topic is. And it tells you that it's due on that day, which was Tuesday, then our live lecture tonight, and then your reply posts. Then we get to your writing skills quiz, which is due by Sunday. I mean, you could do it before that, and it's graded automatically. And then it says here, CJ written assignment. Again, it's a written assignment that's not graded, and it's found under the Lessons tab. You won't find it under the Assignments tab. You'll see in just a few minutes. As we go into our lessons for the week, week 2, let's look at the actual assignments for this week, Models of Criminal CJ Communication. You can see the discussion assignment, and then you can see the quiz. That is all you're going to see for assignments. Again, you won't see anything else. That other thing that's written under written assignment is not, because of the fact that when we get to lesson content, it tells us what we're going to be dealing with this week, and it tells us what our assignments are. Your reading assignments, and then police are interpersonal, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. Your discussion post. CJ writing practice, once again, is not a graded assignment, but we're going to conclude by doing that. And then, of course, your writing skills quiz. And, you know, students have asked why we have this writing skills quiz. Because as you're going to learn throughout this quarter, that it's very important to be accurate. It's very important that your grammar is correct, because you're going to be preparing police reports, incident reports, field reports, and many other reports. You're going to be writing tickets, citations, and all other kinds of things. So you're going to have to be able to be correct. Now, those documents are ultimately going to end up in many instances as exhibits in court. And you will be one of the people who will be testifying in court, and your report will be used in your testimony. Now, I was a defense attorney for many years, and I tell many of my students some of the stories, and you'll hear this one right now, but there are others along the way. Whenever a defense attorney reads a report and they see something improper in there, even a misspelling, even a wrong use of a word, they will take that report and ask that officer on the stand, did they author that report? And the officer says yes. Says, officer, could you, do you remember everything in your report? And say, no. Is there anything that can refresh your recollection? Says, yeah, well, my actual report. Well, the report will be an exhibit, so then the judge will allow you to give that report to the officer, and then, of course, the attorney will have it. And so that person has said that they'll use this word. Nothing has happened since yesterday. Nothing has happened since yesterday. And the word that will be nothing has happened since, S-E-N-S-E, yesterday. Now, when that attorney knows that it was a grammatical error, that the sense that should be in there, nothing has happened since yesterday, should be S-I-N-C-E, and not that sense. So here's what happens. That officer will be forced to read that report out loud. It says, officer, when you wrote this report, did you said since. What did you mean there? What did you mean there? And then the officer will say, well, it means that it didn't happen, you know, since the time, you know, time has changed. Said, how do you spell that word? And then the officer will say, S-I-N-C-E. Say, but your report, what does it say? Oh, it says S-E-N-S-E. So what is that, officer? He said, oh, I made a mistake. Bam. It sounds like a little point, but I'm trying to tell you, what you started to do is you've gotten that officer shown as unprofessional in front of the trier of fact, the judge or the jury, particularly jurors. They expect you to be perfect with it. And so, therefore, a little grammatical error like that can get that officer on the stand. And they're nervous from that point on. Once you get nervous, you're fair game for getting impeached further on other things. And there are some other examples that I'll be giving to you further down in terms of accuracy. And I'll give one. I have one that is really good, but I'll save that for another lecture when we get to the accuracy aspects of it. We'll be coming to that in a few weeks. But I'm just telling you right now why it's important. Even so much as having a capital letter where it's supposed to be. And lawyers are good at doing that. That's what we do. That's what I did as a criminal defense lawyer, and you try to clean it up. But soon as a person admits that they made a mistake, an error, well, then they get rattled, and then their whole demeanor changes and everything. So that is why we require you to take these different writing skills quiz, and it's really a grammar test, because we want to make sure that you begin to write your reports in the right tense, with the right spelling, with the right word used for, because like I said, since, S-I-N-C-E, S-C-E-N-T-S is another way of saying it, and so the English language has to be almost mastered when you're writing these things. So that's why we do that. Okay. So that solves that, because I've had sometimes students say, well, I already know that. Well, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Okay. So now let's talk about before we get to the CJ writing practice. Let's talk about police as being interpersonal. Now, you already know that you're going to be dealing with individuals constantly. And it says here you're going to be called on in situations as a responder, and persons are usually upset, anxious. There's some, you're a first responder and you get there. And so you're going to have to be able to, as it says, adapt to any situation. And you're going to have to be very professional. And you're going to have to present yourself in such a way so that you can gather information, so you can get a clear understanding while you're in the field about what happened there. So it says whether you are speaking to a suspect or a superior, you must always be aware of how you're communicating to that other person. You have to be conscious of it, whether you're interviewing a person who could be a potential witness. And then, it's very, very, very important. And we're going to talk about a few things that are very, very important in just a few minutes. It says a criminal justice professional who has poor interpersonal communication skills, can't communicate with people, may be deemed abrasive, hard to work with, or incorrigible, and you won't be a very good law enforcement professional. So what we want to do is enhance those skills so that when you arrive in tense situations, that you can present yourself in a professional fashion. So let's go over some of these bullet points here, and I'm going to talk about them with you and share and get your mind to thinking. How do you improve your interpersonal communication skills is the question that is on the floor. And so it lists some of the things. So I'm going to take bullet point number 1. It says you have to actively listen to the other person. Now, as you should learn or will learn, active listening means giving your undivided attention to that individual that you are communicating with. If you are trying to multitask at the time that you are trying to listen to that person, active listening will not and does not and cannot take place. I don't care how good you are as a multitasker, active listening requires undivided attention. It requires you to be able to focus on what that person is saying to you so that you can clearly get the information there. So in terms of active listening, you shut out everything else and you concentrate on your audience. And your audience is going to be that individual, whether it's a suspect or if a superior, of course, you know it's a superior because you're going to be sharing details and information to guide that superior, and or you're going to be getting instructions from that superior about what the task is that they want you to perform. And if you're not actively listening to that individual, you can find yourself given the wrong information. Maintain eye contact as much as is appropriate. The eyes tell you a whole lot about an individual when you are communicating with them. For example, if you are talking to a person and that person appears to be evasive with the eyes, looking down, what could be one of the things that might come to mind if that person is not maintaining eye contact with you? Let's assume that we're talking to a potential suspect. What would you say if that person is not maintaining eye contact with you? What is one thing that might jump out, might hit you, that you feel about that person? You can just type it in, and it'll show up, and then I'll see it. Think of one. Untruthful. Yeah. That's a good one. Any others? They're not maintaining eye contact. Nervous about something, hiding something, not honest. Excellent. Those are good points. And those are some of the points. Usually, when a person has able to maintain eye contact, you can see and learn a lot of things about that individual just from that alone. And those are not the case. But let's assume, let me ask you this question. If a person is not maintaining eye contact and they're a potential suspect and you're questioning them about information and they seem to be looking all around, not their head turning, but their eyes looking maybe to the left or either to the right or over what appears to be your shoulder or something like that. What is something that you should be prepared that might possibly happen? Excellent. That's it, Vlad. Right on. That is on point. Yeah, they're looking for a way of escape and might run. And so you have to really be, that's why I say if you're actively listening and then you're maintaining eye contact with that individual, you can see that. Now, you're not going to necessarily say, okay, keep your eyes on me and that kind of stuff, because you don't want to do that. No, this is information for you to be able to recognize what's taking place with that individual. That individual is for some reason or another not communicating with you. Now, let's add this issue. Let's say that the individual that you are talking to is possibly not a suspect, but a person who has been a victim of a crime, like I'll use rape as an example. And they appear not to be looking at you, but they're looking away, they're looking down, and particularly they're looking down. What's your feeling on that one? Absolutely on point. Bingo. You must have listened to some other lectures because those are right on point. Absolutely, Bob. Yeah, they would be ashamed. And particularly if it's a male talking to a female and they were raped by a male. That's why a lot of those cases, they have females to come with them. But you have to be able to be empathetic when it comes to the kind of individual that you are questioning. So if you're in those kind of situations, you want to make sure that you understand the whole scenario and why eye contact might not be maintained. It says as is appropriate to the situation. So I just kind of like threw at you a few things just to kind of get your mind and juices to flow and thinking about interpersonal activities, because like I said again, you're going to be out in the field and you're going to have to communicate with those individuals as well. Let's go to the third point. The third point, assure the person that you understand what he or she is saying. Now, what's some of the ways that you can assure the person that you understand what they are saying? Just give me one that jumps out at you, one that you think of, that you can assure that person that key items. Repeating is one of the best ways, because of the fact that when you repeat back something, that confirms to the person that you were actively listening, that you were paying attention to what they're saying. Okay, what's another way? Another way. Okay, Adam, perfect. That was one of the things that I was sitting here thinking. I said, nod your head. Yes, you can nod your head. You can shrug your shoulders. Use your body language, you know, to let them know that you didn't you didn't understand, or that you do understand. Yes, and then if you yes and nod your head yes, then you will find in a situation there that it is a good idea to apply the earlier statement that one of you guys made, I think it was Bob, that says repeat back. Because when you repeat back to a person something, then, you know, you really let them know by nodding the head first that you're with them, then secondly, confirming the nod of the head by what you repeat back. So very, very important to assure that individual that you understand what they're saying. Also, that individual in that instance will begin to open up to you as well. If you know you're talking to someone and you sense that they're not really hanging on or paying attention to what you're saying, or not getting what you're saying, you become very frustrated and then you shut down. And so that's one of the worst scenarios that you're going to have, because it retards the communication process, because you're not going to be able to reach each other in terms of communication. The next one is use the other person's name as often as possible. Why that? What's the value of that? Of using that person's name? What's the goal there? What are you doing there? Build a connection. Both of you are right. Yes, and the key thing there, what you're really doing there, is you're establishing a connection or a relationship with that individual. People like to be called by their names. They really do. They don't like to be patronized with it. But you know, when you're talking to them and the name, that means also you're also humanizing the conversation as well. You know, I mean, you can say ma'am, you can say sir, and so forth and so on. But at some point, get the name in there. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, or you know, sometimes first names are good, but I usually often try to apply first or either last names. I try to, and then if they're an older person, you know, I put sir in there as a man, ma'am, madam, or ma'am, those kinds of things. The key thing is what you want to do is show them that you, first of all, are establishing a relationship with them to get information, that you're not the enemy, you're not somebody who's trying to, as they say, nail somebody. Now, even with a suspect, using the name with a suspect in questioning a suspect is very good, because of the fact that, you know, there are people that, like I said again, people like to hear their name called. Now, what people don't like is being called out of their names, which brings me to the next point. Be polite. Be polite. You know, oftentimes, unfortunately, many law enforcement officers who are in the field, and I've seen it, they like to use foul language. They believe that that gives them some authority or power, and actually that does not. It actually makes you look unprofessional. I encourage all of my students that when you are out there, you remember that you are a professional. The person is in distress, or they got a problem, or they did something that they might not be happy they did, or they're in trouble or something. But the key thing for you to do is be polite, and then it's not in there, but be patient. Be patient with those individuals. Don't allow frustration to show up in your questioning or either in your body language at all. There was a sergeant years ago who was a fictitious character, and we used to have a TV show, because I'm 66, that came on in the 50s and in the 60s. And then I think in the 80s, I think a movie was done with Tom Hanks in it, and the movie was Dragnet. You ever hear of Dragnet? Either of you ever hear of Dragnet? Yes. Okay, Bob knows about it. And in Dragnet, there was a Sergeant Joe Friday. And Sergeant Friday in the original series was played by a guy named Jack Webb. In the movie with Tom Hanks, I believe it was Dan Aykroyd. Yeah, Dan Aykroyd was Joe Friday. And this guy, he always asked questions. He was, you know, ma'am, sir, and so forth, and he remained polite. Even with some of the worst of characters, he remained polite and would gather information. Well, that's kind of like the same thing you have to do. A more modern instance that you might recall is those of you who saw Beverly Hills Cop. If you remember how the chief of police wanted questioning done, and you know, like for example, if you remember, Taggart, I think, punched Eddie Murphy, and he said, "You want to bring charges up against this guy?" And the officer and the chief said, "You want to bring charges against this guy?" He says, "No, we don't bring charges against another police officer." But what the officer was basically saying was that you need to apologize to this officer then for punching him, the kind of thing, because we don't do that. Well, that's what happens when I say you lose your temper, you get upset. You know, I've even seen interrogations where there's the good cop, bad cop deal, where the bad cop is just kind of like demeaning that individual. Now, that's a role where they're purposely demeaning it, and then the other cop tries to be the good guy and says, "Well, come on, relax, leave him alone, leave Stanley alone. Stanley, would you like a cup of coffee or something? Give you a cup of coffee or something, some gum or a cigarette or something like that." The bottom line is that they appear to show themselves friendly. Well, and actually, they really are doing a routine. But my point being is that the information is oftentimes gathered from that individual who appears to be, quote, a friend of that person. So anyway, be polite. Be polite as you proceed. Be specific and concise in what you're relaying. You're not in court. You're not cross-examining anybody. You're trying to gain the facts. You're trying to gain what happened. You're trying to get information so that you'll have it in your field notes, which we'll be talking about in a few weeks here. And those field notes are taken right there on the scene. And then those field notes later are transferred into reports, which you'll be doing this further down in the future weeks in this class. So be specific and concise in what you are relaying to the individual. Don't try to, that's not your role to trap people. Your role is to gather information, get details. What you hear may not be what the other person is saying, so be sure to ask for clarification. We've kind of talked about that a little earlier. I can't overstate how important it is for clarification purposes of getting information, because it will guide you with your questioning. It will guide you in the direction of your investigation. And the key thing is to gather as much information that will help you to get an understanding about what ultimately is going to end up in your police report, the who, what, when, where, how, and why. I sent you 2 articles last week, and one of those articles has to do with how to write a police report, but the other article involved communication skills. You might want to take a look at that article. You guys familiar with the article I'm talking about? Good. Okay, great. So you look at that article and read it and think about it in terms of it. Now, here's the deal. You're going to make this into a habit. The good and really successful law enforcement officers are able to do each of these points. And not, oh, I got to remember. No, it becomes natural. It just becomes who you are and what you're doing. You always have to remember. It says in our little corner here, interpersonal communication skills are all our ways in which we interpret our needs, feelings, wants, desires, etc. to another person or group. These can be verbal or nonverbal. And so that's why I said you also have to, be conscious in terms of things. Now, watch your expressions of surprise, frown, and stuff like that. It's a tendency that you're going to really have to learn how not to do, because sometimes some stuff you'll hear is shocking, but you're almost like a recorder. You're a machine. You're gathering information. You're asking questions, gathering data and information to put together what exactly happens, so that you can have a successful investigation that leads to good reports and a successful resolution of the problem or issue that you are investigating or dealing with. So now, in the process of doing that, you should be aware of the fact that you're going to be operating in groups, as we already are talking about that in your discussion post. Group communication is going to take place frequently, because you're going to be working with other individuals, other law enforcement officers. You're going to be dealing with superiors. You're going to be dealing with, like, for example, you might deal with forensic people. You might deal with lab people. You might deal with any kind of person and each of them, as it says, are dependent on each other for information so that they can do their job. So it's important that you actually work together. Now, it says group usually consists of 3 or more persons. Well, that's probably true, because the fact that though you may be in a team operating with a partner, but usually someone else joins even you two and come together. And so everybody has a role. Everybody's going to play an important role in doing this. And when we get to the part of actually doing our reports further down in the quarter, like week 8 and near week 10, and around that time, we're going to talk about the chain of custody for evidence that's discovered at the scene and the importance of that. Well, this gets to working together as a team. Knowing the basic skills of group communication in the criminal justice field is not, it says it's very important. Actually, it's critical. As officers, whether you're correctional, probation, or law enforcement, you're going to experience times when you need to communicate within a group format, as I've been talking to you about. You'll need to know how to take the lead, how to instruct the group. You'll need to know how to diffuse a hostile crowd. We're going to be talking about that in week 4, where we deal with hostage. We're also going to be talking about that in some other instances where you're going to show up and people are going to be hostile. Now, just remember this, that the hostility of the individuals may be directed at you because of the way law enforcement is perceived right now. Remember that. And you might not be one of those cops that that is unprofessional, and you want to do it professionally, but they're not going to be giving you a chance. But you're going to have to still press forward and say, do what you need to do on a professional level, using each of these skills that we talked about: active listening, contact, being polite, being patient. And, you're going to have to recognize that that's going to be the case there. You're going to have to be very, 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 very conscious of what's taking place. There's a thing that is now being taught to more departments now, that you're going to encounter individuals who are not just high on drugs or something, but you're going to encounter individuals who have mental issues. And you're going to have to be able to respond to them in such a way where you won't have to use excessive or deadly force, because you can find yourself in trouble. But your communication skills are more important than pulling that weapon, pulling that gun, or even tasing somebody. You don't have to. There are ways that you can always do it, and all departments now are starting to give special training on dealing with those kinds of things there. Okay. Any questions at this point from either of you, or comments? Okay, no questions. Adam, Kent, Bob, Vlad. Okay, all righty. So it's pretty clear. And actually what we're talking about is really some common sense stuff. So now let's move down to the CJ writing practice. Now, this is what I have in your calendar as an assignment. And the reason I put it as an assignment is I want you to do it. But what students start to look for is they say, oh, is this graded? It's not graded, but it's an assignment to help you in terms of the content of the lesson, and also the goal of this course is to improve your written and oral communication. So it says you should commit to studying and practicing writing, spelling, and grammar as provided in your read assignments. I already talked about that. Do what it takes. Some of the weeks of the course, you will practice your writing and grammar skills using an interactive activity like the one we're getting ready to do. And it says it's not graded, but you are sharpening your skills for the graded exercise that will follow. So let's go through this. It says, when you arrive at the crime scene, an old woman in a parsley green dress lies unconscious on the sidewalk. You start wondering what to write in your report. That's because after you called the paramedics first. And then, so now with that in mind, see how you would do on the following multiple choice questions, and they'll help you too in ultimately preparing your police report. So let's delve in. So you hit the next. It says now, when you're writing your notes, it says choose the correctly spelled word. Enforcement A, enforcement B, enforcement C, enforcement D. Which one is correct? A. Okay, everybody says A. Okay. Correct. The enforcement of the law is one of the tasks of the criminal justice professional. So getting that word spelled correctly, it goes to what I was talking about a few minutes ago there. Which sentence is correct? Now, the suspect running from the officer, the suspect ran from the officer, the suspect runs from the officer, just like it's written, the suspect running. Everybody likes B. Correct. The only correct sentence is, because it's a past tense, it's a past tense. To use the present tense, if you wanted to, you could write the suspect runs from the officer, or you could write the suspect is running from the officer. But the more direct is to put in the tense of what happened in when you write your report. You don't want to, if I'm reading your report and I read the suspect is running from the officer, it kind of like makes me say, how come you didn't say what they did? How come you didn't? It happened already. So put in the tense, and that's the best possible answer. Okay. Which sentence is correct? The witness description of suspect. The witness gave me a description from suspect. The witness has giving me a description of the suspect, or the witness gave me a description of the suspect. Yeah, because if you read these out loud, actually, that's when you start to get them. The witness description of the suspect, that's not even a complete thought. The witness gave me a description from. Now, if you said the witness gave me a description of the suspect, that's when you begin to get right. The witness has giving. See that word? It's not giving. You wanted past tense, not present tense. Has given me a description of the suspect. But the witness gave me is more direct and more succinct as well. These are things that are really, really important. Which sentence is correct? Now, coercion is considered an inappropriate from police conduct. Coercion is considered an inappropriate form of police conduct. Coercion are considered an inappropriate form of police conduct. Coercion are considered an inappropriate form of police conduct. What's wrong with D? What's wrong with D and A right off the bat? What's wrong with it? Yep. Spelling. Absolutely. Spelling. So you have to, again, your spelling skills have to be good. So coercion is considered an inappropriate form of conduct. Look, coercion are. That right there is improper grammar. You don't talk like that. Okay? This is it. So coercion is considered an inappropriate. Notice that coercion is misspelled in the other, and that was the point I was bringing to you. Very good. That's the end of this exercise. So it's a little exercise that's done, but these are the kinds of things that as you begin to delve further into this course, that you will begin to appreciate. Some people say, oh man, this is easy. Yeah, it's easy. But what we're trying to do also at the same time is bring to your consciousness certain activities. There are certain things that you do already that you might say, oh man, I gotta watch that one. Particularly with that communication, you know, your facial expressions or your patience, or there'll be police officers that tell you, man, you got to be tough with these guys. You got to be hard with them. They're a piece of blank and whatever. You got to recognize that even the worst kind of person. Now, I'll give you an example of, there's been some suspects that had to be questioned. Like, for example, I'll use John Gacy as one. Richard Speck, you all may not have even heard of those people, but or either what's his name, Jeffrey Dahmer. These were all serial killers that all had to be questioned by somebody. Well, they had done some despicable acts. I'll bring to the present this young man who killed those people at the church in Charlotte, Dylan Roof. This young man, in terms of, if you follow the investigation and listen to any of the questioning of that kid, you begin to understand how he did a despicable thing. Each of these parties did despicable things, but you didn't treat them like they did despicable things if you are the investigator or the officers or anybody trying to gather information, because of the fact that you're unprofessional, and then also you're shooting yourself in the foot. You don't have to be buddy with them, but what you want to do is be polite, respectful, and above all, maintain a professional persona when you're doing those kinds of things. That's pretty much it for this week. It's about 9:18, so we have about 10 minutes. But any 12 minutes, anything that you guys want to ask, any questions that I haven't covered, or something that you might have thought about? No questions, Adam? Bob? We're glad? Okay. Glad? Okay. All right. So anyway, this is, here's the deal. Be very careful about taking lightly each of these week's assignments. Like, for example, oh, wow, this week, man, all I got to do is take this little quiz and then do the discussion post. Yeah, but if you went through that interactive thing, it began to point some things out to you that you have to be conscious of. And when I read your papers that you write, when I read your reports, I'm going to see those things. I'm going to be looking at those things. I have been professionally trained throughout my years to be a linguist and to be able to spot and locate things. Like, for example, if I see somebody type the word I, anywhere by itself, it should be capitalized. Now, there have been times when I've seen people that don't, and even I'm guilty of it sometimes when I'm responding to something. But it's not because I don't, it's because I'm typing so fast that I don't capitalize with the key. But that's no excuse if I'm preparing a report or a document or something like that, because once again, a shrewd defense attorney will make you look like you don't even know how to spell correctly, you don't know good grammar, you don't know good English, which can conclude that you don't know good police work and that you really don't know what you're doing and you're unprofessional and so forth and so on. So those are the points that I wanted to make tonight. Our next lecture will be 2 weeks from today, and that will be the let's see, what is that? January the 26th. January 26th. We will not have a lecture next week. So in the meantime, like I said again, begin to be prepared because of the fact that we're going to continue moving forward. And like I said again, you'll have some light weeks in terms of assignments. Then you'll have, they're not really that heavy, but the key thing is remember what we're doing here. Our goal is to enhance your written and oral communication skills that are essential in your being a good law enforcement professional. So with that, I'm going to say good night to each of you. Have a good week, rest of the week, weekend, and good next week. And then, of course, you know how to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. So I got some background noise back here that some of these people in my house. Hey, can you all not turn that on while thank you. I'm right off the kitchen, so somebody had the garbage disposal on. So anyway, so I'm going to say good night, and you guys have a good evening. All righty. Okay, you too. Thanks, guys.